My name is Anders Jensen. Let's learn some RPA. Today I'll interview Kieran Gilmurray, Global Automation Lead of Mercer. You should watch this interview if you want to grow as an RPA developer, and simply just because Kirean is an awesome guy that will make you happy. Just watch. I will not only interview him, I'll also do reactions to the things he say as something new. It makes me a bit nervous because I'm usually the guy behind the camera doing tutorials. I can do spotless tutorials, but when I'm in front of the camera, I can get very nervous. So right now I'm really nervous, but I'll try to do my best to give you the reactions. What do you think of this format? Do you like it, or should I just stick to tutorials? Give me your feedback in the comments below, and also if you think I can improve on something, let me know. I feel very lucky that I got this YouTube channel, because it makes me interview the leading RPA guys in the industry. It makes me do advanced tutorials on subjects that I simply don't have time for at job. And I really enjoy this because RPA is both my work and my hobby. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed the leading recruiter in the industry called Harrison Good. You can watch the interview, which was really awesome, up here in the corner. With that said, I could really use your help, so if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That will really help me a lot. With that said, let's get to the interview. I am here with Kieran Gilmurray, and I'm here with him because he wrote a very nice article. That's this article. I promised not to share it, but now I'll do it anyway. So hello, Kieran.
How are you, Anders? How's things?
Thank you. Very good. And I'm sorry for sharing it, but I just thought it was that interesting, so we could talk about it today.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What do you want to know?
So, Kieran, I want to know about you. Why should we listen to you? How come that you have met 150 plus RPA developers, as you claim in the title?
Big thing is, big thing, Anders, is I've been doing this job for years and years and years. The first robot I had was in 1998. Solly, the robot that sent automatic text messages and emails out to legal clients and sent out their login details to online case management. So robots are nothing new, if that makes sense. How we now wrap them up and tailor them in nice fancy platforms is, but this has been around for years. So I've met more developers of RPA and software developers than you can throw stones at the best of times. I've met some brilliant ones, and I've met some who would be fair to say tried their best, but were probably paper qualified. That's not to criticize them. They'll maybe get there in the end, but there are very few of those unicorns that you're holding in your hand available in the market. But when you get one, by goodness, what can it do for your program? And this article, that's just the 20 habits or signs of a truly exceptional RPA developer, and we will talk about that today. So let me first ask you, if I only score 12 out of 20, what does that make me? Half a genius. You're just above halfway.
Should I be worried?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think life is a lifelong journey. We learn all the time. The thing that I would say, Anders, is that see the skills that are in that article. They're not just for RPA developers or exceptional RPA developers, but they are skills that are going to be required in this new digital era going forward. So I think if you could pick numbers out there, and I would say they would suit any job. One, for example, is excellent communication skills. Well, what job doesn't need excellent communication skills?
Yeah, you're right. Probably just a job of a gamer in the basement or something that one you can do alone. And then again,
yeah, that said, they play in groups.
Yeah, you're right. And so what we want to do here is that let's go briefly through all of these skills, and then you can elaborate why they are that important, and we can maybe have a discussion. Because maybe I can ask you about how I can improve my skills in one of the ones that I didn't score that well in.
So next teacher, so I might be able to help.
If we have a key habit here in this article, what will you say that is?
I'll probably say number one, Anders. It's having a strategic view. Coders are not hired to do coding or do nice documentation or paperwork. They're there to deliver business outcomes, and every developer and every individual ought to understand what the business needs to do to be successful, and then needs to understand how their work is intimately entwined in making that happen. So RPA code in itself is useless It's the outcome of the RPA code or the automation code that delivers business outcomes that's absolutely key. And everybody needs to have the business strategic goal as their North Star.
So nice knowing around your business is key to automate things. So would
You
you
have
say
to.
so would you say that a person that could have been in the company for like 10 years, would he or she might become an excellent RPA developer if because he or she got the business skills at least, right?
I think you need the business skills in any role. Otherwise you have people there doing marketing for marketing's sake, doing RPA for RPA's sake. But unless you actually understand the direction of the business, what's important, and that's the things that make the cash tills ring, i.e. profit, then you're doing something wrong. So anybody who understands the business could be good. But what I'm suggesting is, unlike a lot of the vendors will say, anybody can become an RPA developer. I don't think that's the case. It doesn't mean they can't be involved in RPA. So that business person might be a great BA, for example. She might be a great center of expertise lead or that role. But for an RPA developer, you not only need to understand the business, you need those other skills like logic, programming skills, understanding of data, and to be a truly exceptional developer. If you haven't got that logical mind and those skills, I don't believe you can become a really, really effective developer.
And with that said, what you're saying here is that, and that must hold true in the opposite direction as well. So a nice technical developer in the traditional sense doesn't necessarily transition into a good RPA developer because he or she might lack the business skills that you told us about.
Potentially, so if you don't understand the business skills in the opposite direction, then what are you actually doing on a daily basis? You're producing a piece of code. You hope that matches what the business wants according to the process in front of you. But if you don't actually understand the process itself or why that exists, how do you know that is actually delivering a business outcome or going toward delivering a business outcome or task or process that's actually going to result in profit? So yeah. It's both. The business person needs to understand the technical skills to allow them to code. The technical or the coder needs to understand why they're doing what they're doing to be able to add true value.
So, and if I know this is maybe a hard question to answer, but if we have to cut the cake somewhere, how many percent would we have to be technical skills, and what is the business skills for an RPA developer, would you say?
70-30. I would pick that out just out of the sky.
So 70% business skills?
70% is technical skills.
Technical skills,
you need to be able to deliver it. But as long as you have the North Star of understanding why the process is important, how it delivers value, and how that value is actually connected to the business and its customers and its staff, that's the lesser of the two parts for a developer. But really, really key. I can't emphasize enough that the developer is not there to develop code as such. They're there to deliver a business outcome, and they need to understand the context and why, and make sure they do that in a really efficient manner.
So Kieran, say that I'm a very technical RPA developer from a technical background, and I want to improve in this area where I score low or I might score low. What would you recommend me doing?
Lots of different things, Anders. The first one is before you bring any RPA developer in and let them loose on the business, I would make them spend time actually understanding the business strategy. So very often when I've created induction programs in the past, I've got the CEO to talk to the RPA team or the new recruits or any recruits if it's been artificial intelligence, machine learning staff that I've required and hired, and explain the why behind the business, what's important, why we do what we do, why we're important to customers, why customers buy the product or service that we deliver. And then they've got the context. Then they meet the people that they're working for. So you might have a head of sales, a head of operations, a head of a particular division, and they meet them as well. And they get to explain how their work fills into the overall business strategy and why it's important that the RPA developer, the IT programmer, the database individual, why she is particularly going to be useful and needed in the organization to help them deliver outcomes that customers are willing to pay money for. That is one of the very first things I do, give people the context that they need, and then they can use the skills that they've got, or we train them. If they're very logical and technical, as you mentioned a moment ago, we train those skills and add on top of them all of the time, not just at induction, but every month, every quarter, every year that they're in the business, to try and make them even more effective, to allow them to deliver even greater benefit to the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could you give a good advice? Say that I have a lot of viewers that might be outside of the job market. Can they improve their business skills in any way? Because that could be a bit hard to talk to a CEO when you don't have a job or something. But what would you recommend here?
Yeah, I suppose that on that one, Anders, it's if we're talking about people who are going into the very first job who maybe don't have much career experience. My personal one is when I was younger, I did summer jobs. I learned about different businesses. When I listened, when I wasn't working, maybe it was slightly naughty or slightly cheeky, but if I found a local businessman or woman who were very successful, I used to ring up and say, look, would you mind having a conversation with me to tell me what has made you successful? And 9 times out of 10, people were more than willing to help. So it doesn't stop anyone actually picking up the phone and having a conversation to say, look, could I just spend a little bit of time with you? There's neighbors, uncles, aunts, all these people can provide information as to why. The other bit I would recommend, and again, some people are for it or against it, is just volunteer. It might be really difficult sometimes to get into RPA for folks who don't have experience as such. They maybe have the qualifications online. And I'm not advocating for someone to be, cheap labor for a year or businesses to use them and not actually pay them a fair return. But if a business hasn't got the money but could benefit from the skills and that creates an opportunity for you, then I'm all for, interns, and I'm all for volunteering and doing what you could do. Or else you might have a relative you could develop some automation for their business, and then you start to understand a business and the product and whatever else, add some value, and then add something into your CV or your resume that you can talk to that evidences that you are very good at what you do, both the code and understanding the context and delivering an outcome as well. Lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, or maybe just call a Zoom guy and then ask him a lot of questions and get his wisdom. That could help us a lot as well.
100%. I have to say I love LinkedIn. That is one of my go-to platforms to listen and to learn from other people. And it's one of those, this is where social media is absolutely fantastic, Anders. I've met in my life, I think I'm connected to about 8, 10, 12,000 people in some shape, form or other. If I ever ask a question, people are more than willing to jump in. So in this article, we've upgraded it from 15 to 20 habits, simply because folks commented on the article so much over the last numbers of months. I've reached out to that community and said, would you like to comment? Would you like to add some insights and some quotes? And every one of them have been absolutely fantastic, as you will see. And I would recommend that for other people as well. But remember to give something back as well,
Yeah, maybe you should tell us where we can find that article if we want to read it as well.
Yeah,
where can we find you?
I ideally go to LinkedIn, because that's where I publish a lot of my articles, and look up 20 habits of exceptional RPA developers. Just connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And then if the articles that I and the subject matter experts have written or commented to are helpful, fantastic. And if I can help someone in any way, please let me know as well. More than happy to do so.
Yeah, I saw that you answered a lot of questions where all the guys that have read your article, they ask you questions and you were quite busy answering all of them. So I was really impressed, and I'm really happy that you could talk to me today.
No, I think we've an amazing community out there, Anders. In life, I've lived and traveled in lots of different places, and I've yet to find people I don't like. People are wonderful, really, really wonderful. We just need to start up that conversation.
I think that the curious, adaptable, and excited by change, that's a bit like the first habit. I mean, you have to be curious if you want to be a good business analyst, right? And you need to be adaptable and excited by change, I believe. I
think you do, but remember, you have lots of people, and this can be when you've got a very logical mindset. Sometimes people can be quite fixed about what they're doing. So if I have a Python coder who just likes coding in Python, the only thing they want to do is code in Python. That wouldn't allow you to actually iterate as a developer, because remember, this automation, digital, it's changing all the time. So the products that you've got are the solutions that are going to solve problems today. They're not going to be the solutions and the products and the tools that are going to solve problems for tomorrow. And unless you're willing to learn and evolve and engage with all these tools and try new things out and be curious and inquisitive and want to learn and be excited by this, and then get your excitement, coming out of your mouth and showing other people that automation, digitization is an exciting space, I'm not too sure that you will succeed as successfully as you might if you approached it from a curious mindset and an excited place to want to grow and learn.
That's probably also one of the benefits as being an RPA developer, at least to me. That's just like I can automate in all sorts of programs. I think I tried every program on earth. I haven't, but it feels like that, and you get to learn a lot because there's a lot of things, different things to automate. So
yeah. And the products are changing all the time because of that competition in the market. Everything's changing. You asked me earlier on about how do you get into business. Well, imagine being an RPA programmer. There's lots of manual processes, and then remember that RPA is the automated, repeatable side, but automation platforms that are out there now that have machine learning and OCR and all of the tools, NLP, and whatever else. Those skills are transferable to insurance, to operations companies, to Google, to Amazon, to tons and tons of firms. So if you get in as an RPA or automation developer somewhere, you can move to lots and lots of businesses. It's a real career opener.
You mentioned I don't know if it was number 16 or 14, but you mentioned the importance of machine learning and AI, and you just talked about it. Why is that important? I mean, when you automate, it's probably not that often like machine learning, maybe a bit OCR or something, but how would you say that, why is that important?
A numbers of reasons why machine learning and artificial intelligence is important. So if you just have OCR out of the box, you'll maybe, if the form's really standard, get 40% of forms immediately codifiable and transferable as data going into, whatever it is, an ERP system or CRM system. If you have AI on top of that and understand how it's used, that can go up to 80, 90+%. So all of a sudden, the processes that you're automating using OCR and AI are immediately more valuable than just having OCR by itself. If you understand AI and machine learning, then you can build models or components or Legos, as some people call them, to allow higher level decision making in your processes. So where RPA at its most base level is point, click, repeat, then you're starting to go, well, if, then, else, and lots of different scenarios, which allows you to automate more and more and deliver more and more value. It's also, and this is where I think sometimes we maybe miss a trick here with RPA or automation. When you're running a process, there's lots of different data points. And therefore, if you're doing process mapping and you write away data points, all of a sudden you can judge the length of a process and the queue of a process. And then you can start to lean into Lean Six Sigma or process optimization. And then you can actually track over time using data how much of an improvement in the process you've made, be it exception rates, process tack time or duration or whatever else, to allow you to get better and better. And then ultimately, remember this, like most organizations, Anders, the process is something that needs done and is interesting, but the real gold in organization these days, or oil, if you want to call it that, is the data. And if you can actually understand not just what the process can do, but if there's data within that process that you can then take and curate or add new value or discover new insights that create new value, then all of a sudden as an automation developer, you've suddenly added a host of new income opportunities or insights to your company that is truly, truly valuable. That's why I love data coming out of any process, or individuals understanding the power of data itself, because that is the gold or the oil upon which most organizations will depend going forward. How many organizations aren't digital these days or won't be in 10 years' time?
And when we talk about data and presenting data, how important is it to document what you're doing is actually profitable? Because I've seen a lot of non-profitable RPA cases, and they're still out there. So it seems like quite hard to measure these things, that how much money you spend going in and how much you take out of it. Is that something you can recognize too?
100%. I've written an article, How to Build a Business Case, interestingly, for automation. It's something people find very difficult. Very often, people get excited by the technology, and it goes back to that old phrase, Anders, now I've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The first bit I always say is, look, begin with the business problem. Begin with the business. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve? And then work back from that. But if you put money into an RPA project, and at an enterprise level, let's be honest, within 6 months, by the time you buy 10 licenses, build up a cloud platform, hire a COE, bring in a consultant, you might not be too many dollars away from $250,000. And if you automate, tasks or automate things that are not returning real cash, then in my humble opinion, your RPA program has failed. Some people will argue, well, look, we're getting better customer service. Well, tell me this, is that better customer service translating into more customers who are staying longer, in other words, for more years where you can earn more income, or are you earning new revenue from them by doing something that they're now willing to pay for that they weren't willing to pay for before? Because happier customers are fantastic. And I fully believe in happier customers and happier staff through automation. But if you've just put cost into the business and you haven't earned a return on that investment, why would you put it into automation? Why would you not put it into something else? Lots of people still do that. I think EY discovered in 2018, 50% of RPA projects failed. In my writing, I've said, to be honest, it's probably a lot higher. People just won't admit the fact that they failed, or they will twist it to, I was going to get FTE out of my business, to now I'm making customers and staff happier. Where's the return? If you cannot get a return, spend the money somewhere else on something else that will generate real cash for your business.
Well, that was just a side note. I was just excited to hear your opinion about that. So let's jump back to your habits. Sorry. and excellent communication and interpersonal skills you're also mentioning. And that makes sense because you need to be able to communicate with your colleagues and be able to map the processes, I believe, or what's that about?
Yeah, I think it's all that. Every day we're not islands as such. As a developer, you're going to have to engage with other developers. The way automation works these days, there's a lot of onshore and offshore development teams. So therefore, you have to not only engage physically sitting beside someone and writing and verbally, but you're going to have to engage at distance. Going forward, we're probably going to see people working from home on Zoom a lot more. So again, it increases the need to have better communication skills. And then remember, when you're communicating as well at stand-ups, at retros, at sprints, when you're communicating in your documentation, you also need to be able to engage with the SME who understands the process of the BA. You also need to be able to communicate, if you want to be exceptional, with that CEO or with that business person, to drive work your way, to listen, to understand why it's important that your work is going to be able to deliver the value it needs to deliver. And the more confidence you can give folks at the top of the company, the more work they're going to generate and more work they're going to put your way. So it isn't just one thing, it's every moment of every day is a moment to communicate. And the better communicators can sell the program better, can deliver more value, get more out of the product, get more out of their working hours than anyone else. I think that skill, to go back, Anders, earlier on, communication are the three things I would improve in every job, in every organization that I've ever worked in. That is really transferable and massively key.
Communication. While I am very good at making tutorials behind the screen, it's another story about me in front of the camera here. But this is a way of putting pressure on myself. I'll try to improve my communication skills in front of a camera. What do you think about these reaction videos? Do you like them, or let me know in the comment section below. I'll also try to improve my English. So if you think there's anything I can do, take a course, fix some grammar things or anything, please let me also know. I just picked up a nice cup of coffee, so let's get back to the video. And you mentioned coding skills. I think you mentioned it at least twice. You said good coding skills and logical sense. And then you have a habit called VBA and Excel, and we might put them together. But you don't mention any coding language. Doesn't it matter what coding language I can do, or is that of little importance? You mentioned VBA in your article, at least.
Yeah, I did for two reasons, and let me talk about both in turn, the VBA and the coding skills. What organization does not use Excel? What team in a business does not use Excel? You can integrate RPA with Excel really easily. So all of a sudden you've doubled your ability to manipulate a process and manipulate data. If you put VBA into Excel, then rather than trying to jump around in hoops and circles inside of RPA, which you can do, but it's just a lot of code and a lot of time and it may not work. If you can call an Excel spreadsheet, get VBA to run, get it to manipulate the data, and then hand the output back to RPA, all of a sudden you've just widened the scope of processes that you have made a tremendous difference on using RPA. So love VBA, love Excel, because everybody else does. Now, if you're talking about other coding skills, why I am not mentioning specific skills, although I like Python, I like .NET and whatever else, is that each of the different products have a language behind them.
I'm not the best RPA developer from a technical standpoint. And what do I mean with that? It means that I often face a problem in coding. When I face such a problem, I just go to Stack Overflow or the UiPath forum because most of the time people will have faced that problem before me. If I cannot find a solution there, I simply just ask one of the great developers that I got around me here at work at Lesser. Right now, we don't have any at work because it's night. I usually do these videos and tutorials after work. But when they are here, I can always ask them about Java or .NET. They'll always, I say always because I haven't got a problem yet which they couldn't solve. With that said, I can do coding myself, but I'll say as an RPA developer, from a technical standpoint, I'm good at regex, Excel, and string and date manipulation in .NET. If you don't know what regex is, you should definitely check it out. I made a great video up here, an advanced use case where I use regex. It's a series of characters which can define a search pattern so we can extract text from strings that could be emails, invoices, or so. Do you believe that coding is important as an RPA developer? Let me know here in the comments section. We could have a discussion about that. With that said, let's get back to the...
And you will notice in my articles, Anders, I tend not to mention particular products or recommend particular products, and that's very, very deliberate. And the reason it's very deliberate is you have to not just go with the top 3. Brilliant products, but you can't just go with those. You need to go out and you need to work out what is the best platform out of the top 50 products that's going to suit you. And once you've then done that, behind each of those products will be a coding language like .NET, C#, Python, or whatever else. Once you have then got your product and got your language, all of a sudden your world opens up even stronger and even further. I'm a fan of low code and no code, but being honest, I have not seen a product that is perfectly low code that you can do sophisticated automations with that will allow you to generate large quantities of cash. The products are aiming toward that direction and democratizing coding and automation a lot more, but I still think we're a moment away from it. Therefore, great coding skills allows you to create such extensibility within any of the platforms and with any of the work that you're doing that it's too good a skill to not have at this stage or at any stage.
Learning another RPA tool? Sure. As you might have seen on this channel, you know I like to work with a lot of different RPA tools. That was my colleague in his car honking his horn trying to disturb my video, and he succeeded. But let's get back to the point. I like to learn a lot of RPA tools, and if I should recommend you one tool that you could look at, that is OpenRPA. You could look at it up here. There's a complete demo and interview with the OpenRPA founder, Alan Zimmerman. Is that from a developer's standpoint? Because if I should go out and learn like 50 tools or maybe just 10, I could spend like a couple of years in doing that, and then I won't be able to manage doing my job. So was that from a developer's standpoint, you should learn all these tools?
I don't think you need to learn them all from a developer standpoint. Most organizations these days tend to have 2 tools, not one, although most of the tools are starting to converge in terms of functionalities and capabilities and whatever else. So learning 1/2 tools and learning 1 or 2 languages just suddenly opens up a whole new world for everyone. I'm not saying that everyone in your team needs to be a developer either, just to be clear in this, because if you've got a center of expertise, having 1 or 2 really good coders who can extend the functionality of the products and train people who are not naturally gifted coders, who are learning, who have the competency and the capability, all of a sudden when everybody understands how to code really well and build for resiliency and build for security and extend the products that have been presented by writing code that best matches your business processes, then all of a sudden you've got a competitive advantage there that no other team has and none of your competitors do. And the one thing I have seen time and time again is the more coders in a business, the better. subject to, remember, some of the coding products, they make it so easy that a coder who just loves coding could get bored quite quickly as well. So there's a balance in between the two. Have you found that?
Boredom?
Yeah.
No, I think I'm quite excited, but no, not yet. I do 3 tools and that's it. And actually on this channel, I tried like 10 tools or something, and I found that exciting just to have the basic understanding of the tools and try them out. But it's
And what have you gone with? What did you choose as your coding preference?
UiPath, because that's probably the biggest and the most easiest one. And you said that you will not recommend anything, but if we have to make you do that, and just outside of the top 3, which product will you recommend here? If you have to.
I'm not going to. Again, and for very deliberate reasons. Each of the tools are all subtly different. So there's smaller tools out there that get businesses started in automation, and again, when you look at some of those, and there is lots there. So if I mention one, it's not a recommendation, but SoftMotive, that's now bought from Microsoft, was always a great tool to get automation started in your organization.
I totally agree with Kirean here. You should learn Power Automate Desktop, as SoftMotive is now called. Why should you do that? You should do that because it's Microsoft behind it. I made a complete beginner's tutorial which you can watch by clicking the link up here.
But I deliberately don't mention any particular tool because I genuinely believe you need to go out and work out what are the most important things that your organization needs from a tool. And one of the articles I wrote, Anders, was I think it was 50 things you need to do to choose the right platform for you. And I would recommend people going down that list or your own list, and then going out and then finding the product or platform that best suited or best matched that list. Or it might be products or platforms, and then go for it, because that's the only way it's going to work.
Is there any way that I can get some inspiration? Like, say that in my company, we use like 2 tools and I'm quite laser focused on those 2 tools. And so how should I go about, how should I discover new things? Can you recommend some media or anything, or someone who writes about all these new things? Where do you get inspiration from?
Mine is I 2 things, Anders. So I read a lot of books. I have about 8 beside me, and I read, oddly enough, about 2 or 3 at a time. And these are all around digital transformation, automation, business books, or whatever else. That gives me the technical skills and the contextual skills as well. So there's book after book after book, and if you want, we'll create a book list at the end of this, because there's some genius books out there. And the other bit is genuinely LinkedIn. Go back to LinkedIn. Find the people who are actually commenting there, and there's numbers and names in the industry who provide really great insights online in the form of text or cartoons or comments or whatever else. That's a bit that I cannot recommend highly enough. The community that is the automation community, the RPA community, it is fantastic. And that's why I write, you want to give something back to that and help other people. Get on LinkedIn, get listening, get learning. But just do one favor, which is, if you've been given a lot of help by someone, at least try and, if you can't give them help back online to answer their questions or join in the conversation, find another person who's contributing online and give a little bit of something back to the community. That way it will work, and it will promote itself really, really well. And I've learned so much, so much. And I can now lean out to a huge network of people if I get stuck in anything at all in work.
That's actually one of the things that's impressed me, the RPA community. That's really big, and people are really helpful to each other compared to maybe some other tech communities, at least.
Yeah. I would agree. I'm in touch with people across the world. How would you and I have met, for example, normally if we weren't in this community?
We will never have met.
Yeah, I love it. So
yeah, then that's right. And that brings us back to the excellent communication skills, because maybe that's a part of the explanation of the growing community, because a lot of RPA developers actually has great communication skills, so they are able to get in contact with each other and share wisdom.
Isn't it? It's an interesting group. I really think that, because remember, what you mentioned earlier on, is a great developer a great business person, an RPA developer? And the answer is yes, they are. In other words, it's both. And that's a bit where sometimes if you just study one language and you are a very, very technical developer, that's your universe. And that's okay, that's fantastic. But when you combine business skills with any skill in life, any IT skill, my goodness, you've got a powerful combination there. And that's where most people come into RPA. They're neither massively technical, if they are fantastic, they're neither solely focused on the business. It's actually both together. And that's why I would recommend business skills, communication skills, programming skills, RPA skills, all combined together. It's a beautiful jigsaw.
RPA books. I can recommend 2 RPA books to become a better RPA developer. Both books are in my personal bookshelf. The first book is learningvisualbasic.net. There's a link to it in the description below. This book is great because it's about the coding language .NET behind UiPath and other RPA tools. It will teach you everything with great examples, and when I say everything, it's what's sufficient as an RPA developer. It's not thick, but it's enough. So you can probably read this in a weekend. The other great book I have is Robotic Process Automation Projects. It's written by the famous Nandan Mulakara, and when I say famous, it's because he makes a lot of great LinkedIn posts about the RPA industry as a whole. The book is 8 great use cases which you can solve in UiPath or Automation Anywhere. It will teach you all the best practices around RPA. There's a link to that in the description as well. While I have read this book 5 times, I have only read this once, but I solved all the use cases in it. We will get back with a video where I'll bring in Nandan, and then he can tell me some things about writing a book. What books can you recommend? It doesn't have to be RPA books. You can just recommend me a book that will make me a better RPA developer. Let me know in the comments below. And actually, you are also mentioning agile skills, like in the sorts of project management and stuff like that. How important is that? Should I go out and take a course in Scrum or Prince or whatever they're called at them?
Yeah, I would. In this one, you can draw me on an agile method. So I like Agile Scrum. I think between waterfall and agile, there's no one or all is the perfect place. So let me start with that. But this is one of the benefits of RPA, is that you can get value out to the business really, really quickly using RPA or automation tools. And therefore, to get the value out, you need to adopt a methodology of delivery that is best suited to that product. And for me personally, that is Agile. So I want to deliver what I call waves of value. So rather than waiting 18, 12, 20 weeks to deliver value to an organization, I want to go through a very quick design thinking session with the business, or lean for digital. It's called lots of things to work out. What do they want? How can I get them what they need so they feel really excited about it? And how can my team who are working with them deliver this in a way that we're excited about it as well? And then very quickly, I want to develop just enough paperwork. I don't want to leave paperwork debt, don't get me wrong. I want to develop enough paperwork and enough videos and enough code to get them the first, let's say, 20 FTs worth of benefit in the first 6-8 weeks. And then I want to deliver another 5 and another 5 and another 5. And I want to engage with this person every day to get regular feedback, to get them into the testing process, get them involved so that they can say, she might say, I didn't mean that, I meant this. I didn't mean that, I meant this. Fantastic. That's the kind of input that gets everybody excited about delivering value to an organization and gets them involved. And for me, that's Agile, not waterfall, which is paper heavy at the start potentially. And then you come back in 12, 20 weeks later and go, there, I've given you what I think you wanted. And then to go into cycle of, well, I didn't mean that, it wasn't quite like that, or whatever else. That's not to say waterfall isn't suitable and applicable in circumstances. It absolutely is. But I have to say RPA plus Agile or DevOps, that methodology, really, really powerful combination to get value out quick.
And could we make an argument for saying like these quick waves, like you call them? Could that be if we want to create some hype in the organization? Because often in an organization, people, they don't know about RPA. So if they can see some quick results, then we might get it easier going and easier collaboration between you as an RPA developer and the business.
I would say absolutely 100% yes. How many people have you seen in a business who complain about their IT team, or complain that they told someone what they wanted, and then they didn't see them for 6 months. And then when they came back to them, they didn't deliver what they needed. When I'm engaged and involved in something and I'm seeing the results really, really quickly, it just gets me more excited and more interested in what we're doing. And that's what Agile absolutely allows. As long as I'm delivering those waves of value, as long as I am listening, and again, cautiously making sure the right documentation and the right methods are done in the background so we don't leave technical debt behind. But RPA is one of those exciting areas that can really get a business bought into what you're doing. And that allows you to do more and more and more and more and more. I have to say that's the exciting part of the tool.
RPA books. I can recommend 2 RPA books to become a better RPA developer. Both books are in my personal bookshelf. The first book is learningvisualbasic.net. There's a link to it in the description below. This book is great because it's about the coding language.net behind UiPath and other RPA tools. It will teach you everything with great examples, and when I say everything, it's what's sufficient as an RPA developer. It's not thick, but it's enough. So you can probably read this in a weekend. The other great book I have is Robotic Process Automation Projects. It's written by the famous Nandan Mulakara, and when I say famous, it's because he makes a lot of great LinkedIn posts about the RPA industry as a whole. The book is 8 great use cases which you can solve in UiPath or Automation Anywhere. It will teach you all the best practices around RPA. There's a link to that in the description as well. While I have read this book 5 times, I have only read this once, but I solved all the use cases in it. We will get back with a video where I'll bring in Nandan, and then he can tell me some things about writing a book. What books can you recommend? It doesn't have to be RPA books. You can just recommend me a book that will make me a better RPA developer. Let me know in the comments below. And actually, documentation, that was one of your other habits, as I remember, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, I think it's important. You know,
or willing to document. I mean, show me a developer who has excitement in documenting, but I understand the importance of that. But
yeah. Well, what happens if you do a process or develop a process and then you leave? And this market is really hot for developers. So all of a sudden, someone has to come in and unpick your code. Now, I'm not a fan of documentation for documentation's sake. That's why I say just enough documentation developed really quickly with some videos and a heavy outline of what you're doing is absolutely key. But the good news is now, if you look at some of the vendors on the market and look at some of the products out there, they will automatically generate the process design document for you and document the process so that the developer is spending more time coding and the BA is spending more time going out finding new automations than they are getting stuck in a maze of documentation that appears to go nowhere sometimes. But you have to be careful. You can't leave technical debt. So I'm not suggesting when we go fast, not having documentation, not doing it securely, not following good methods or methodologies. But equally speaking, you have to move rapidly. Therefore, just do enough and employ automation to the creation of your documents as well, so that you are truly living your dream and getting more value out quicker.
Cool. And actually, you mentioned videos, because as an RPA developer, I have yet to see using videos a lot. There's probably a lot of endless PDDs, and you can read them through, and your documentation is also written. What's the benefit of videos? I can of course I can see it, but they need to be short and on point, or you make long videos.
I think you just described there where you said you've got stuck in PDDs, and the PDDs they can be quite divorced from, okay, what's the reality of the process? How does this work in the real world? How does the person actually using the process feel about it? Or again, the one thing that always worries me about PDDs, Anders, is I'm potentially recreating the same process that's rubbish, a horrible process, but I'm just making it faster. Therefore, to actually have that conversation with the person who needs the outcome of the process and understand the why behind the process as a BA or as a developer, that suddenly makes me so much more effective. And that goes back to that listening and communication skills, because designing for digital or automation can be quite different to the way a person does it. And when you start to dig into the process, and this is one of the benefits of RPA, for the first time in years, you question, well, why are we doing that? Why are you doing that process? And very often what you find is people go, I don't know. So, well, what happens if we stopped it? Well, stop the whole process rather than automating it. That saved you money and time straight away. What if we stop those 5 tasks within that process? Fantastic, we'll do that. You know, that is powerful. Now, if you can't get that, then the next best thing is to hit, I think it's psr.exe on your Microsoft PC. Automatically, you've got a screen recorder for free that you can put voice and volume on. And imagine handing a PDD that's just got enough screens and enough documentation that's been created by the system, but then you can hear the reason why a person is doing what they're doing. So as they're pressing the keys, they could start the conversation with, well, the reason we produce or do this particular action is to get this particular outcome. What I really want is this. Now I'll walk you through it. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to be explaining what I'm doing. And then it suddenly brings it to life. Too many RPA developers sit in the back office. The BAs engage with the customers. The RPA developer develops something they think the customer wants on paper, or the BA asked, and it becomes a telephone tennis or an email tennis exercise, back forward, and ultimately the internal customer doesn't get what they want. That's why vision, sight, sound, and remember, we're all different learners. Some are pictorial, some are sound related. That's why that combination of the two suddenly brings so much more vivid nature, or such a more vivid nature to the actual production that the developer is creating. You know, you're more likely to get it right than anything else, combining those two things. Cheap, free, easy to do. Just do it, try it. You'll be amazed at the difference.
Yeah, so as an RPA developer, I can actually ruin my job for myself, because if I analyze all the processes myself, and I can see that this one we can drop, this one we can drop, this one we can drop, there might be nothing left for me to automate, right?
Fantastic. That would be brilliant. The bit I always say, before you automate a horrible process, you need to ask yourself, should that process exist in the first place? Now, if you're a developer and you're sort of sitting there going, my goodness, there's 100 processes in this business and none of them make sense, I don't think it'll quite be as bad as that. But you're providing value to the business. You're not automating something for the sake of automation. You've been a real good business partner. Why are we doing that? Well, we don't need to. Okay, if we stop doing that, how much time would that save? That could save you days or weeks or hours. You can still attribute that to the value of the automation department, because the automation department has saved FTEs or full-time employees days, weeks, months, or potentially years of work. And that is the problem with organizations. Organizations are combinations of processes, and very often they're built upon year after year after year. And nobody sits down to question, why are we doing some of the things we do? And that makes RPA really powerful, because once you do that for the first time in years, you can strip stuff out and save time without doing anything. You can redesign things to make the customer or the employee experience far, far better. And you can add value at so many different layers. That's why people get excited about RPA as well. More than one benefit, not just the outcome, but documenting, questioning, challenging, rewriting, digitizing, creating a new way of actually working with customers and staff and delivering new digital value.
Documentation is always important to do as an RPA developer. It's best practice. As Kirean says, we can do videos. I like doing videos because I can do them really, really fast comparing to if I have to write a PDD or even update a PDD. So do I think documentation is important? Yes, to the business side of my organization, I do a lot of documentation, mostly on videos. But for future developers, no, I don't think so. I have taken over a lot of RPA projects, and it was quicker for me to just start over and build it from scratch than to try to understand what's going on in the code and in the documentation. We can do that because RPA is such a fast way of developing. You should do version control. And I made a great video about setting up version control in UiPath, which you can watch by clicking the link up here. Cool.
Kieran, we're about to come to an end here, but let's not reveal anything because we want all the viewers to go and read the article themselves. But if you have to point out one habit that I forgot or that I probably talked too quickly through, what would you say that could be from these 20? Or if you had a bonus?
Well, I don't have a bonus. Yeah, I maybe if we grow it to 25 habits when more people comment, then that would be fantastic. But I think there's about 30,000 people who've looked at that particular article to date. I think the key one there, and I'll go back to what I said earlier on, communication is absolutely key, because you can be the best developer in the world, but if you can't communicate, you're not going to deliver anything for your colleagues, and you're not going to deliver anything for the business. If you can code brilliantly, but you can't actually explain what you're doing, you're in trouble. And if you don't understand the value of, for example, data, and to be able to explain that to someone, then when we mentioned data earlier on as one of the key components of any good production or good automation, a business won't understand what you can actually do. And I think at every layer of every role in every organization, I repeat this phrase, Anders, every time I come to a team, if I could improve 3 things in any team, any business, any role, it's communication. I live and dream by that, or live and die by that.
But isn't that quite, I mean, technically you can always grow, but improving your communication skill, that can be quite hard, can it?
It can, and it's not something we're actually taught at school. It's not something we're taught in business. We're thrown in the deep end and say, right, work, deliver. But the most effective thing I've done with my teams as part of their induction and ongoing education, and it is ongoing education, the more I invest, the more we get out of our team and out of our business. I teach them about communication skills, how to communicate online like this, how to communicate at distance, how to communicate in documentation, be it PDDs, SDDs, PowerPoint slides. We look at the different audiences that they come across. Are you very technical? If you're very technical, then that audience type tends to want more detail, more, not less pictures. If you're very creative, like your marketing team or your sales team or your digital team, that team tends to want more visuals and more video and more sound. If you're at the top of a company, you want bullet points. If you're lower down the company, I don't mean that in a disrespectful sense, you want more detail. And therefore, when you're communicating with your audience, the first thing you need to do is say, okay, what's their level of understanding? What's their position in the company? Because they might not have a lot of time. What's their technical capability? What's their visual or learning style? And therefore, when I'm going to communicate with you in any role, I'm already cognizant of where I can best pitch what I'm actually saying, or how I communicate with you. I do that in a way that best resonates with you, so that we both get the most out of the conversation possible. I recommend communication training to any and every team that I come across. It makes all of the difference in a business.
Cool. And thank you, Kirean, for sharing your habits with us. And I will put the link in the description here so we can find you on LinkedIn and the article itself. So I'll link to both of them. And people can just find you LinkedIn, and then they can find the article easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll put the link of the article into this as well. And then if anybody wants any help, anybody wants to jump into this or future articles or whatever else, please do ask. Ask me, ask the community as well, because as you said earlier on, Anders, this is one fantastic community who love to communicate and love to help each other. Just remember, if you get help, to help others as well, because that helps the community grow and encourages people to want to do the same.
Cool. Thank you, Kirean, for taking your time. It was very kind of you.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And delighted to meet you, by the way. And that again shows you the power of LinkedIn and this community as well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye now.
Wow. Thank you, Kirean. Thank you for teaching me a lot of things in 1 hour. I really enjoyed our conversation. You could help me as a viewer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That will really help me a lot. So what do you think about these reaction videos where I will speak between the clips? Do you enjoy it, or do you just think it's Phil? Please let me know in the comments, as I will do my future videos based on that. Now you might ask what you should see next. I can recommend the RoboCorp record attempt over here if you like open source RPA. Go watch that, it's funny as well. Or you could watch my UiPath 2-hour tutorial, which will teach you UiPath from the beginning. Thank you for your support. Bye.